Saskatchewan and Alberta just dropped a nuclear announcement that could literally split Canada in half.
So, independence must mean freedom, guys.
And they're not asking Ottawa for permission anymore.
Alberta and Saskatchewan just announced plans to join the U.S. as the 51st and 52nd states. These two provinces control 75% of Canada's oil production, and they're absolutely done with Ottawa's financial abuse.
These two provinces unite in a way that hasn't happened since Canadian Confederation.
Reality check. This isn't your typical political theater where everyone shakes hands for the cameras then goes home. Danielle Smith and Scott Moe just pulled off something that hasn't happened since Canadian Confederation began. They sat down in Lloydminster, not coincidentally on the Alberta-Saskatchewan border, for a joint caucus meeting that sent shockwaves through Parliament Hill faster than you can say equalization payments.
That we've got an independence referendum officially filed and in the works.
But here's what makes this absolutely mind-blowing. These provinces aren't just threatening to leave. They're actively building the legal framework to make it happen.
They just announced they have the signatures.
The Alberta Prosperity Project has already smashed through their signature requirements, collecting over 250,000 names when they only needed 177,000. Saskatchewan's grassroots movement is charging ahead with over 3,000 signatures toward their 125,000 threshold.
Alberta in particular, it's not just another Canadian province, it's an economic superpower.
Numbers don't lie, and Alberta's numbers are absolutely staggering. This province pumps out 4.2 million barrels of oil daily. That's 1.5 billion barrels annually, outproducing most OPEC nations. With a GDP hitting $340 billion, Alberta single-handedly generates 14% of Canada's entire economic output, using just 11% of the population. Meanwhile, Saskatchewan quietly dominates global wheat, potash, and uranium exports, most heading straight to American markets.
So put simply, Alberta is subsidizing the entire Canadian Confederation.
Ever wonder why these provinces are so fed up? Over the past decade, Alberta has sent $250 billion more to Ottawa than it received back in federal spending. That's not a typo. $250 billion. Imagine working overtime every day while your roommate spends your paycheck then complains you're not contributing enough to household chores. That's essentially Alberta's relationship with Canada right now.
Quebec receives $13.2 billion in what's called equalization payment.
It unevenly benefits Quebec.
What makes this even more infuriating is Quebec's role in this financial circus. They pocket $13.2 billion annually in equalization payments, money that comes directly from Alberta and Saskatchewan's tax contributions. The kicker? Quebec actively blocks Alberta's pipeline projects while living off Western oil wealth. It's like your broke cousin borrowing money then sabotaging your business.
He's a high criminal. 5 RCMP cruisers showed up at his house and arrested him. He was in jail for 2 days. It's made to protect the farmers.
Saskatchewan farmers are getting absolutely buried under environmental regulations that make zero sense on the ground. Ottawa is basically saying, grow our food, fuel our economy, but follow these rules we invented while sipping lattes in downtown boardrooms. Carbon taxes and emission standards are crushing agricultural operations, while eastern provinces lecture them about climate responsibility using Western-funded paychecks.
Quebec continues to block Alberta's pipelines.
Pipeline cancellations tell the whole story of federal betrayal. The Keystone XL cancellation wasn't just an economic setback. It was Ottawa giving Alberta the middle finger. When your own government kills billion-dollar projects while collecting taxes on the resources those projects would transport, you create the exact resentment exploding across Western Canada today.
Is this issue, as fervent and maybe even as legitimate this time around as it has been in Quebec, especially during referendums there in the 80s and 90s?
Think the legal framework doesn't exist for separation? Think again. Quebec tested separation waters twice, in 1980 and 1995, coming razor close to success both times. Canada's own Clarity Act allows provinces to separate through clear referendum results and simple majority votes. The roadmap exists. Alberta and Saskatchewan just need the collective will to walk it.
65% of the majority party support separation.
Current polling shows 36% of Albertans support separation, with 34% of Saskatchewan residents backing independence. That's not fringe politics. That's a substantial base with room to grow. Premier Scott Moe publicly stated he wouldn't block an independence vote if citizens demanded one. In political speak, that's practically rolling out the red carpet.
Now, Albertan Premier Danielle Smith and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe both made it absolutely clear that their two provinces.
What fascinates me most is how economically integrated these provinces already are with the United States. Alberta and Saskatchewan conduct more trade with American states than with Eastern Canadian provinces. Vancouver trades more with Seattle than with Ontario. Economically, culturally, and geographically, Western Canada already operates in America's orbit. They're just missing the official paperwork.
We're going to only do that by creating policies that are going to unleash the opportunity for investment to flow into all of the natural resources that we have in Canada, and that includes oil and gas, and getting it to market.
Why would America want them? Simple: instant energy dominance. Acquiring Alberta alone would make the United States the world's third largest oil producer overnight. Add Saskatchewan's uranium reserves, and America suddenly controls a massive chunk of global nuclear fuel supply.
Uranium, potash, things that the world wants, and things that the central federal government just doesn't make any easier to produce. And
that's not just economic expansion, that's strategic dominance on a continental scale. Adding these provinces would instantly boost American energy independence while securing northern borders. Alaska proved geographic separation isn't a barrier to statehood.
Are absolutely united in standing up for their own citizens as over and against the dismissive entitlement mentality of Ottawa.
What happens to Canada without its Western cash cows? Ottawa faces an immediate $20 billion annual shortfall without Alberta's tax contributions. That's the difference between balanced budgets and fiscal catastrophe. The dominoes don't stop there either. Quebec independence transforms from political posturing to economic necessity without Western oil money. Subscribe if you want to see how this political earthquake reshapes North America. We're documenting history in real time here.
Without Alberta, the federal government in Ottawa would face a near $20 billion shortfall every single year.
Consider what remains of Canada in this scenario. The Maritime provinces, Ontario, and whatever's left of the Confederation would face an aging population, declining industrial base, and crushing federal debt without Western resource revenues. The political fragmentation would be immediate and severe. I find it remarkable how Ottawa continues treating this like typical Western alienation that'll blow over after some symbolic gestures. They're missing the fundamental shift happening here. This isn't about hurt feelings or political grandstanding. It's about economic survival and democratic representation.
You know, we have a taxpayer-funded pipeline, the TMX pipeline. It's owned by Canadians.
Infrastructure already runs north-south rather than east-west. Energy pipelines, transportation networks, communication systems, everything connects these provinces to American markets. Political integration would simply formalize relationships built over decades of cross-border commerce.
British Columbia's Premier David Eby continues to downplay the idea of a new northern pipeline from Alberta to the coast.
British Columbia presents another fascinating wildcard in this continental chess game. Economically tied to the Pacific Northwest, BC might not rush toward American statehood, but they definitely drift from Ottawa's influence. The province's cultural connections and geographic positioning point south rather than east.
It threatens their positive group identity, and they're more likely to want to separate from that unfairness.
Population demographics support this transition beautifully. 6 million people represents more than many current American states. Combined economic output would immediately rank them among America's top-tier states. These wouldn't be economic refugees joining America. They'd be prosperous new citizens contributing massive wealth. Military considerations make this even more compelling from Washington's perspective. Northern border security, Arctic sovereignty, resource protection, Alberta and Saskatchewan solve multiple strategic challenges simultaneously. The Pentagon has to be salivating over uranium reserves alone.
I don't know, I just think it's time for the West to be more independent, stronger.
Cultural alignment between these provinces makes perfect sense too. Rural, resource-dependent, increasingly conservative, they've watched urban Eastern Canada dictate policies harming their livelihoods while benefiting from their wealth. Shared values, economic structures, and federal frustrations create natural political unity. Environmental hypocrisy reaches peak absurdity when eastern provinces lecture Western Canada about emissions while enjoying high living standards funded by Western resources. Ottawa imposes regulations devastating energy and agriculture sectors, then acts shocked when those regions rebel against economic suicide.
But Alberta is moving forward with an independence referendum for 2026.
Timing couldn't be more perfect either. Alberta's referendum locks in for 2026, coinciding with growing American interest in resource-rich territories. The United States has been expanding westward for centuries. English-speaking provinces with massive natural resources represent obvious strategic acquisitions. Global precedents exist for peaceful territorial transitions. The Soviet Union dissolved without major warfare. Czechoslovakia split amicably. Scotland nearly left the United Kingdom through democratic referendum. Modern nations reorganize borders through democratic processes when pressures become overwhelming.
It's independence from an authoritarian overreach.
Federal equalization formulas represent the core poison destroying Canadian unity. Money flows from productive western provinces to eastern regions, contributing far less economically. Alberta and Saskatchewan keep footing everyone else's bills, then get attacked for questioning why their wallets stay empty. What fascinates me most is Ottawa's complete tone-deaf response to this crisis. They continue treating legitimate grievances like typical Western alienation that'll disappear after symbolic gestures. Missing the fundamental shift here, this isn't hurt feelings, it's economic survival and democratic representation.
The APP is claiming they've already gathered almost 250,000 pledges supporting an independence referendum.
I think what surprises me most is how quickly this has evolved from fringe political movement to mainstream political possibility. When premiers start holding joint meetings and signature thresholds get slashed by 70%, you know something fundamental has shifted in the political landscape. The 2026 referendum timeline puts enormous pressure on federal politicians to respond meaningfully. Empty promises about renewed federalism won't satisfy anyone anymore. Western Canada demands concrete changes to equalization formulas, pipeline approvals, and regulatory frameworks. Without dramatic policy reversals, separation becomes inevitable.
I think Western Canada has been shunned long enough, and I think we're ready to stand up.
American receptiveness to expansion remains the final variable. If Washington signals openness to new states while Ottawa maintains its dismissive approach, Alberta and Saskatchewan's path forward crystallizes completely. Mathematical, cultural, and economic arguments all point toward the same conclusion.
I think we should follow along. Yeah.
Confederation's fragile balance depends entirely on Western resources subsidizing Eastern provinces. Remove that foundation, and the entire structure collapses overnight. Quebec separatism resurges, maritime provinces face economic crisis, Ontario struggles with industrial decline. The dominoes fall rapidly.
We've got to be working into a better system.
This represents continental realignment happening in real time, not regional politics. Two resource-rich provinces are essentially shopping for better governance while their current government treats them like ATMs with voting rights. Frankly, it's about time someone called Ottawa's bluff on Western alienation. Hit subscribe because 2026 is shaping up to be the year that redraws the map of North America.